Hogwarts Legacy is the new immersive open-world action RPG set in the Harry Potter universe, and it's coming out very, very soon. But what kind of PC do you need to be able to run Hogwarts Legacy? Hi guys, I'm Colesy, and today I'm going to run down a bunch of different PCs that I have specifically chosen that meet the specs of Hogwarts Legacy. So whatever spec you're looking for, I have a PC recommendation for you. Now I have these both for the UK and Europe and for the US, so wherever you are in the world, I have a PC chosen for you. All of these PCs are available on Amazon. I have specifically chosen Amazon because it is available to most people, and I have filtered through all of the PCs that meet the spec to try and find the best deals, the best rated sellers and rated PCs to make sure that if you do choose to buy one of these PCs, which all the links will be in the description, then you'll have hopefully a really good easy time buying it and a good time running it. I've done this type of video before with a lot of other different games. Hogwarts Legacy is a new game that's coming out, and I myself am looking forward to playing it, and so I figured a lot of other people are going to be very interested in this, and I do like to recommend a PC every now and again. I'm going to turn my head this way and run through the quick specs. So we have a minimum / low spec, we have a recommended / high spec, we have ultra specs, and we have ultra 4K specs. Depending on your budget, depending on what you're looking to run Hogwarts Legacy at, like frame rate, resolution wise, depends on which spec you're going for, but we're going to run through all four of those. I have two PCs each for the UK and Europe and for US, so we'll run through all of those. Depending on where you are in the world, depends on which one applies to you, but we will run through all of those and we'll go over the specs and the why I've specifically chosen the PCs I have chosen. Right, so we're going to start low end with the lowest spec that Hogwarts is asking for. We'll do the two UK ones for the low spec, then we'll do the two US ones for the low spec, and so on as we go through the specs. So, lowest spec is listed as such. It wants 64-bit Windows 10. CPU-wise, we're looking at an Intel Core i5-6600 or an AMD Ryzen 5 1400. It wants 16 gig of RAM. GPU, it wants a NVIDIA GeForce GTX 960 4GB card or an AMD Radeon RX 470 4GB card. It wants DirectX version 12. Storage, it wants an 85GB space on your hard drive. And in the notes specifically, this is where it will tell us the resolution and the frame rate that this spec is aimed at. So SSD says it's preferred. Hard drive is what it's supporting, so that's why it specifically says in the storage hard drive, but the rest of them after this specifically say SSD. And then it also says that this is for 720 30 FPS at low quality settings, so lower than I would expect people to be aiming for, but this is the lowest budget PCs that you're going to be able to get that meet this low specs. That means that you're actually able to play Hogwarts Legacy. Now, again with this, what I have done here is I only recommend generally these new PCs on Amazon. Like, I'm not going for anything that somebody's built secondhand. Generally, the ratings on those are kind of iffy anyway. So these are new PCs. Now, a lot of the specs it's asking for are slightly older spec hardware. So a lot of these specs at the minute in this low category will sort of over excel what it's asking for, really. So hopefully you'll be able to get better than 720 30 FPS. We're starting off with the ADME gaming PC. So this has an Intel 10105F CPU. It's quite difficult to say actually. GTX 1650 4GB card, 16 gig of RAM, a 240 gig SSD, and a terabyte hard drive, Windows 11. So as we said, meets all the specifications. It's got the RAM that you need. It has a CPU which over meets the CPU, or is at least equivalent to the CPU that it's asking for. It's got a more recent graphics card with the 1650 as opposed to the 960 that it's asking for. This is £599.95. I think this is a good option. It gets you in there. It's a good PC that's able to play lots of other games as well. Something I always say when I do these specific PC videos where I'm aiming it at a game specifically. Now, Hogwarts is a new game that is releasing, but these PCs will be able to play a whole bunch of older games that you want to play, so you have a lot of options in terms of the games that you're going to play, not just Hogwarts. But it does meet the low spec for Hogwarts. 59995 has a decent upgrade path. You could upgrade to an i5 if you wanted to in future. You can upgrade the graphics card in future down the line if you wanted to as well. So stuff like that I think is really important, because if you buy this old spec, then you're going to have to kind of upgrade most parts of it if you want to upgrade. Whereas with this, you can actually just add a slightly newer CPU or a slightly newer GPU, more RAM, without much issue. So next up here we have a CyberPower Wyvern gaming PC. This has a Ryzen 5 4500. Again, it's got a GTX 1650 4GB graphics card, 16GB of RAM. This one has a 500GB NVMe SSD, no hard drive in this one, and Windows 11 suitable power supply, etc. Again, we're more than meeting the spec here. We don't have a hard drive in this one at all, so you only have the 500GB SSD, but that is more than enough than Hogwarts is asking for, and you can always add more storage later down the line. This is the sort of Ryzen equivalent. I've tried to do Intel and Ryzen, one of each if I can, depends on what I'm able to find, and I know for sure that later the more expensive PCs, turns out they're a lot harder to find than you would think. Again, a PC that definitely outspecs the low spec that they're asking for, and I'm hoping you'd at least be able to get 60 FPS or maybe up to 1080p. A solid PC nonetheless, good ratings, good price, again just under £600, so I think this is a solid bet. And should be a reliable, decent PC if you're looking for something like this. The first US option we have here, again, they're roughly similar spec because this spec is about to be roughly around the same price. So this is the Skytech Kronos mini gaming PC. It has an i3 10100F. It's got a GTX 1650, 500GB SSD, 16GB of RAM, Windows 10 64-bit, which is exactly what it's asking for, 600-watt gold power supply. Again, everything looks good here. There is an option for a slightly more expensive PC, which is way further up than we need this one to be with the 3050 and the 12100F. But again, this is all new hardware. This is all stuff that is brand new. You're not buying secondhand. $679.99, so $680 roughly. I don't know exactly what that translates to in English money, conversion rates and stuff like that. And I have made sure that when I looked up these PCs, I made sure that I looked at available to deliver in America. So even though in the top left it says delivery to the UK, that's not what we're looking at. We're not getting these delivered to the UK. These are for people that want them in the US. Again, links to the US ones, again, will be in the description underneath the UK ones, and hopefully I'll label everything good so that it's easy to find. I think a PC that way outplays the low spec that Hogwarts is asking for, and you'll have a good experience with this. Next American PC. So this one is a little bit of a... This one I had to choose last minute because I did have another PC that I had chosen from HP. Again, very reliable brand, so I figured it was worth choosing. They had all sold out, unfortunately, so I can't really recommend a PC that isn't for sale. So I've kind of picked another HP one. It is a little more expensive at $848. 6-core Ryzen 5600. It's got the Radeon RX 5500. And then you've got your 16GB of RAM, 512 SSD. Again, it meets the spec. It is a little bit more expensive. It's similar spec to the one I had chosen previously. It has the same graphics card. We've gone with the AMD graphics card in this one rather than the Nvidia one. But it does meet the spec. It is a little bit more expensive. In my personal opinion, I'd probably go with the other one that I recommended. I just wanted to make sure I had two of each, so I quickly had to try and look this one up. But yeah, this does meet the spec. If you're interested, if you want to go with something that is HP, a brand that you've heard of, a brand that you particularly favor, then this is a decent option. It'll meet the spec that we're looking at. That's all the low spec PCs that we have that meet the low specification of Hogwarts. Again, a lot of those kind of do just outdo the low spec, but now we're going to be looking at the high spec, the recommended spec from Hogwarts Legacy. So again, Windows 10 it wants an Intel Core i7-8700 or a Ryzen 5 3600, 16GB of RAM, just the same as before. Now this does seem to step up in a GPU in my opinion, so we're going from the 962. This wants a GeForce 1080 Ti or an AMD Ryzen RX 5700 XT. This does actually also list an Intel Arc GPU, but I haven't touched those personally, so I'm not going to be recommending one of those because I'm not entirely sure how stable and good they are at the minute. DirectX version 12, it's not really worth mentioning. This one specifies an 85GB SSD, so it wants 85GB of space on an SSD specifically. The last one said hard drive, but we are stepping up to SSD now, which is kind of more of the norm. And in the notes here, it is specifying that we are looking at 1080p, 60 FPS, high quality settings. So this is more what I would consider more of a standard that we're aiming for. We're aiming at 1080p, 60 frames per second. That's what I would say is a standard gaming frame rate and resolution that a lot of people are looking to play at. So starting off with the UK version here. So we have the Vibox. Don't know how to pronounce it, whether it's Vibox or Vbox. 6-core Intel i5 10400F, NVIDIA 3060 Ti 8GB graphics card, 16 gig of RAM, terabyte hard drive, 250 gig SSD, Windows 11. I have made sure to compare the 1080 Ti, which is a bit of an older graphics card now, with the RTX 3060 Ti, and they are roughly equivalent, if not the 3060 is better. So I have made sure that this does still meet the spec, even though it's not the exact model listed in the specification. Again, we've got the 16 gig of RAM, we've got a terabyte hard drive, which is good for bulk storage. You've got 240 gig SSD, which is more than enough to stick Hogwarts on your SSD. I've made sure that the CPU is equivalent or better than the one that they're asking for, being as the one they're asking for is, again, a little bit older. So £879.95. I think that's a decent price. I think that's a reasonable price for what you're getting. Solid PC. Again, I'd be quite happy running and using this PC on a day-to-day basis, playing games, editing a bit of video and stuff like that. Solid little PC there. So option there, number 1 for the UK. Option 2, we're stepping up in price a little bit to $999.95. This has the Intel 11400F CPU, has a RTX 3060 Ti like the last one did, 16 gig of RAM, 1 terabyte Gen 3 NVMe SSD, Windows 11, all that good stuff. So we're getting rid of the hard drive completely with this one. We are stepping up to an NVMe SSD, a terabyte, nice amount of space, plenty of space to put a bunch of games on, not just Hogwarts. Same GPU, it works for this budget, this specification that we're looking at. So this is the GPU that we've gone with. In terms of the CPU, it is a little bit newer, so this is more just of a little bit of an update, a little bit of an upgrade on the other one that we looked at. But again, it depends on the budget that you're looking to spend. Both of these will be able to play Hogwarts at the spec that we're looking at, so it just depends whether you have the extra money that you want to spend up front to get a little bit of a newer CPU and a little bit more storage as an SSD, basically. That was an ADMI, by the way. I didn't know if I mentioned that, but ADMI. I assume they're called ADMI. ADMI. I'm going to say ADMI. So the first US option we have here is a Yayan. Again, can't pronounce these PC company names, but it's a Katana X10 gaming PC. So this has the i5-11400F, the 3060 Ti 8 gig. We've got a 500 gig NVMe SSD, 16 gig of DDR4 RAM, Windows 11, all that good stuff, all the other things that you need to make the PC work. That's all there, that's all good. So pretty much the same spec as the last UK PC that we looked at, other than it's got a smaller SSD. So instead of the terabyte, this one has a 500 gig SSD. So again, meets all the specs, outperforms on many of the specs, because the specs that it's asking for are for an older PC, which a lot of people will have and wonder whether their PC can run it. But if you're looking for something new and you're looking to buy a PC to run this is a good option, in my opinion. You can always add more storage after the fact, whether that's a hard drive, whether that's another SSD, that up to you down the line if you want to add something like that in future. But $1,149, I think that's a good option. I think that roughly equivalates to roughly around what we were looking at UK, if not a little bit cheaper. So PC number 2, we've gone with the Ryzen option here. So we have a Skytech Gaming Archangel gaming PC with the Ryzen 5 5600X, a RTX 3060 Ti again, 1 terabyte NVMe SSD, 16 gig of DDR4 RAM, Windows 10 this one, not Windows 11, but you can upgrade that pretty easily anyway. So again, same GPU, got the right amount of RAM, got more than enough storage with the terabyte SSD. The only difference here is we've gone for a Ryzen CPU rather than an Intel CPU. It is more than enough for what Hogwarts is asking for this 1080 60 FPS recommended spec. So yeah, 1,127. What was the last one? 1,149. So again, roughly about the same price. Up to you what you go with. Again, at the end of the day, maybe you're going to look at these visually and go, I just like the white one better. That is completely up to you, completely your decision. And I'm looking at spec and making sure this will run it. If you want to then make the decision on, but I prefer one that looks nice in my setup, that's a decision for you to make. This is all down to personal opinion at the end of the day. Looks, I'm making sure that the spec of the PC will work for you. That's my goal here. Those are all the recommended spec PCs for Hogwarts Legacy. And now we move on to the Ultra Spec. Ultra Spec for Hogwarts Legacy is asking for, again, Windows 10. These are all looking for Windows 10. So as long as you're on Windows 10, which all of these are, you'll be fine. Windows 11 is just an upgraded, updated version of that. So, CPU-wise, for the Ultra Spec, we're looking at an Intel Core i7-10700K or an AMD Ryzen 7 5800X. In terms of RAM here, we're looking at 32 gig of RAM, so we're doubling the amount of RAM now. And the GPU, we're looking at RTX 2080 Ti or an AMD Radeon RX 6800 XT. Again, DirectX version 12. Storage, we're still 85 gig SSD. And the notes here say we are aiming for 1440p 60 FPS at ultra quality settings. We're stepping up resolution again to 1440p 60 FPS. Again, it's a very common thing that people are running. I'm running a 1440p monitor myself, so this PC would be roughly something that I would be looking at to run it on a monitor I already have. But again, it all depends on your budget, what monitors you already have, what you're looking at running it at, etc., what you decide to go with. We're upgrading the RAM from the 16 gig to the 32. That seems to be quite a big upgrade and limits us on what PCs are on offer somewhat, because a lot of PCs seem to come with 16 gig. I think that's generally like the basic standard amount that people are going for these days. 32 is much more of a step up. It is kind of the next step. You don't really go 16 to anything else. They normally list them as 8, 16, 32, 64, and they do it like that, kind of doubles each time. So first PC we have here for the UK is a CyberPower PC Lux gaming PC. This has a i7 11700, an RTX 3060 12 gig, 32 gig of RAM, a terabyte NVMe SSD, power supply, Windows 11, all that good stuff. Liquid cooling, that's nice. I mean, again, doesn't really matter. Whatever PC you buy, whether it's air-cooled or liquid-cooled, they should run perfectly fine. Maybe you have a preference to liquid cooling and think it's better in your opinion, so in that case, here's a liquid cooling PC for you. So we are slightly newer on the CPU than the one they asked for. Still an i7, but it's like one generation newer. In terms of the graphics card, again, I've made sure to compare the 3060 versus the 2080 Ti and make sure that they're roughly equivalent so that you will be able to still meet the resolution and FPS that they're aiming for here with the Ultra Spec. So, yeah, here we go. £1,212 currently at the time of recording, 5% off. Yeah, I think it's a good option. Looks nice. Again, reliable brand that I've heard a lot about. Seems like a very good PC. We've got a NVMe SSD, so again, plenty of room for Hogwarts and a bunch of other games if you want to stick those on your SSD as well. Yeah, I think this is a good option here. Link is in the description if you want to check it out. We'll move on to the second UK PC. We have the Vibox/VBox, don't know how to say it, Intel i7 12700F processor, RTX 3070, 32 gig of RAM, 480 gig SSD and a 2TB hard drive, Windows 11. So this one, again, we've stuck with Intel. We've gone for an even newer i7 with a 12 series rather than the 11 series that we had on the last one, and newer than the 10 series that they're asking for. We've got an RTX 3070, which again is going to meet the spec of the GPU that they're asking for. 32 gig of RAM, which is what we need. 480 gig SSD, so SSD space ready for the game, and you've got a 2TB hard drive for putting maybe other games on that don't need an SSD particularly, or for just bulk storage of photos, videos, whatever you want to put on there. So again, another good option, a little bit more pricey at £1,379.95. But again, we are upgrading the CPU and the graphics card is again an upgrade, so it makes sense that it's going to be a little bit more expensive, but another good option here, I think. On to the American options, the US options for the Ultra Spec PCs. So we're starting off here with a Skytech Azure gaming PC desktop, i7 2700F, NVIDIA RTX 3070, 1TB NVMe SSD, 32 gig of RAM, 750 watt gold PSU power supply, all-in-one liquid cooler, Windows 11, all that good stuff. So pretty much same spec as the last PC we looked at from the UK. It's got the 12700F CPU. It's got the RTX 3070 graphics card. This one does have a terabyte NVMe SSD. So again, plenty of room to put Hogwarts on and a bunch of other games on a nice fast SSD. Price-wise, we're looking at $1,599.99. So $1,600 for this one. Again, if you compare like the dollar worth is versus the UK, they end up being roughly around the same price. So there we go. I think a good option here. Again, we've stuck with the Intel CPU and gone with the NVIDIA GPU just because they are the ones I know most about. I do like a Ryzen CPU. AMD graphics I know less about, and they tend to be a little bit more scarce to find as well. That's something I have found. So that's why sometimes they're not included quite as much. They just don't seem to be as popular and as about as the NVIDIA options for graphics cards are. but as long as it meets the spec, I've included it in the list. So there might be some more AMD GPUs coming up. Next PC we have for the US, for the Ultra Spec, we have the MPG Velox by MSI. Again, MSI, pretty well-known brand, so I figured it was fine to go with. So on this one, we have the i7-10700F processor, so it's roughly exactly the one it's looking for. Now, the one they're looking for specifically is the 10700K, and this is 10700F, but I made sure to make sure that these were basically equivalent, and they are pretty much the same CPU. I think the K is overclockable, the F is not, but again, I checked and double-checked to make sure that this would meet the spec. 32 gig of RAM, 512 gig SSD, a 3TB hard drive, and again, we're going with the RTX 3070. Similar spec to what we looked at, a little bit older CPU, but perfectly meets the Ultra spec that we're looking at. 32 gig of RAM, what we need, plenty of SSD space. This has a whole lot of hard drive as well, so you can fit plenty of other stuff on here if you want. But yeah, again, meets the spec. We're looking at basically $1,400 for this one, $1,399.99. It's a nice looking MSI PC, so I think it looks pretty good. This says you can't ship it to the UK, but that's fine because we're not shipping it to the UK, we're shipping it to the US. It's all good. So there's your second option for the Ultra spec for Hogwarts Legacy. Now we're on to the tippest top spec sheet that Hogwarts Legacy has given us. This is the Ultra 4K spec list. 64-bit Windows 10. We are looking for, again, the same CPU as the Ultra spec. So the i7-10700K or the Ryzen 7 5800X. Still 32 gig of RAM. What we're upgrading here is the GPU mainly. So GPU, we are looking for a NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3090 Ti or an AMD Radeon RX 7900 XT. Again, DirectX version 12. Again, still 85 gig of SSD. The notes here say we are aiming at 2160p at 60 frames per second at ultra quality. So 4K, 60 FPS. The only difference between the Ultra 4K and the Ultra specs are we need an upgraded GPU. The CPU, the RAM, the storage, all the same. So we just need a beefier GPU in this one. So, like I said, this does step up somewhat. It is still difficult to get hold of a 3090 Ti, being as the new 40 series graphics cards have come out. We have gone mostly for 40 series graphics cards because they are the most up-to-date and the most available. So, for the first UK PC, we have the Audit Gaming PC, AMD Ryzen 9 5900X CPU, NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4080, 32 gig of RAM, 1TB Gen 4 NVMe, Windows 11. Looks like a beautiful PC. It is £2,519.95. It is not a cheap PC, but you are looking to run a brand new open world, beautiful looking game at 4K 60 FPS. So you can understand you need a little bit of a beast to run it. So what we've got here, we have a Ryzen 9 rather than the Ryzen 7. So we have a better CPU than is necessary, and we have an RTX 4080 rather than the 3090 Ti. Again, I've done my comparison to make sure that this is roughly the same, but it is a newer graphics card, so this one's actually more up to date than the PC they're asking for, and again, it meets all the spec that you would want if you're looking to run Hogwarts Legacy at 4K 60 FPS. You are a baller if you're doing that, by the way. That's super cool. Again, we're back with a Vibox, don't know how to say it still, Intel i9-11900F, RTX 4080 graphics card, 32 gig of RAM, 1TB NVMe M.2 SSD, Windows 11. So pretty much very similar specs as the last one. We've still got that 1TB NVMe M.2 SSD. Still got the 32 gig of RAM. We've gone for the Intel version, the i9, which again beats the CPU that they're asking for the Ultra spec. And we've got the RTX 4080 again. Very nice. Very good PC, £2,449.95. Again, it looks super cool. I mean, these PCs, a lot of these PCs look awesome. I love the look of them. The styling that they do with these is incredible, and to think that all that power fits in there is pretty incredible. They're your UK/Europe options for those PCs. Now it is time to look at the US options for the Ultra 4K spec list. First up here, we have the Empowered PC. It's an RTX 4080, 8-core Intel i7-10700F, 32 gig of RAM, 512 gig NVMe SSD, 2TB hard drive, 850 watt power supply, Windows 11, all that good stuff. So again, 4080 is what we're going for here with the GPU. In terms of this one, again, we've gone with a similar CPU that we used in the last spec list, the ultra spec list, we've gone with a i7-10700F, which is basically the same as a 10700K, 32 gig of RAM, which we need. We've got 512 gig of SSD space, so plenty of room to put the game on, and 2 terabyte hard drive for other storage of things. So again, a great option in my opinion. We are looking at $2,399.99, so $2,400 here, which I think kind of works out cheaper than the UK ones, because the UK we were kind of looking at about $2,500, and we're roughly around $2,500 for the US as well. So with conversion, kind of ends up cheaper than the UK version. But again, a really cool looking PC. I like that weird mirror front that it's got. That sort of the infinity mirror. Super cool. Ratings seem good on this PC as well. So yeah, good option there if you're looking for the 4K 60 FPS option. Last offering we have, we're back with a MPG Velox MSI PC. We got the Ryzen 7 5700X, 32 gig of RAM, 512 gig NVMe SSD, 2 terabyte hard drive, NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4080, Windows 11. So again, we're looking at the same price as the last one. This basically just swaps out the Intel CPU for an AMD CPU. Now this is slightly less powerful than the one they're saying with the 5800X. We've got the 5700X, one version down. It's still a Ryzen 7, so it still has that. It's still the same generation. It's just not quite the 5800X. So again, $2,400, a lot of money. Up to you which one you go with. Maybe you prefer the MSI, maybe you like the brand of MSI better, trust that more. Up to you, maybe you prefer the styling of the MSI. Well, there we go. Those are all of my recommendations for PCs for the UK, Europe, and the US for Hogwarts Legacy. Now, Hogwarts Legacy had 4 different spec lists, so whether you want low, recommended, /high, ultra, or ultra 4K, there is a PC in there for you. Like I said, all the links will be down in the description if you want to check out any of these PCs. I found them, they're what I found, they're my personal choices. There might be better options in your opinion. There might be something that has like a store that maybe doesn't have as good a ratings, and I decided to not go with that, but maybe you're willing to take that risk and you think that that is going to be a good store or PC to go with. Again, completely up to you, but I just wanted to help you guys out if you were questioning on what kind of PC, what kind of money I'm going to need to spend to run Hogwarts at the spec list that you're looking at. I will be streaming Hogwarts Legacy as it releases. I have pre-ordered the deluxe version, so I get the 72 hours early access because I'm actually going away on the day it releases, so I wouldn't be able to play it for a week otherwise. So I'm going to be streaming that over on my YouTube channel as well. So if you want to come and check it out, then come by and say hi and let me know what you think to the game. I'm going to just be enjoying it and seeing what I think to it as well. So hopefully you guys have found this useful. If there is any questions that you guys have, please feel free to ask. I'm always happy to answer questions. I'm always happy to look at a PC that you have, found or you think might be, is this good enough? Always happy to answer those questions and help you out, work to your specific budget, whatever that is. So yeah, please do feel free to ask me questions, whether it's on Twitter, in the comments, whatever it is, feel free. Always happy to help you guys. So thank you guys for watching. Hope it's been useful, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye!